Amidst these relentless clashes, one particular episode stands out with striking clarity. The moment when Ukrainian Azov troops obliterated Russian soldiers who believed they were safe inside heavily fortified bunkers. What began as a desperate attempt by Russian forces to regroup and shield themselves underground turned into a deadly trap that showcased Azov's precision, discipline, and unwavering determination. This is not just another battle report. It is the story of how bunkers meant to serve as safe havens became tombs, and how Ukrainian defenders once again proved that superior tactics, courage, and intelligence can overcome brute force, no matter how deeply entrenched it may appear. For months, Russian forces had been digging in across the Eastern Front, carving defensive lines into the soil of Ukraine. Bunkers reinforced with steel beams, labyrinths of trenches, and camouflaged underground shelters dotted the landscape like scars, each designed to withstand artillery barrages, drone reconnaissance, and direct assaults. To Russian commanders, these positions symbolized strength and control. To the soldiers ordered to occupy them, the bunkers symbolized safety, a shield against Ukraine's relentless advances and a place to catch their breath amidst chaos. But what they did not expect was the Azov regiment. Hardened by years of combat experience and armed with both technology and tactical discipline, Azov identified, isolated, and destroyed these hiding places with surgical precision. The so-called fortresses of the Russian army became cages, and the shelters they trusted turned into graves. Azov's operation began long before the first shot was fired. Soldiers monitored Russian movements for days, collecting every piece of intelligence available. Drones circled silently above the battlefield, providing real-time images of entrances, supply routes, and hidden positions. Scouts on the ground confirmed weak points and charted the layout of trenches feeding into the bunkers. Each step was calculated. Azov did not rush blindly toward their enemy. Instead, they orchestrated a carefully planned strike designed not simply to flush the enemy out, but to crush them entirely, leaving no possibility of escape. Every move would be deliberate, every strike decisive. When the attack finally began, it did so in the silence of dawn. The air was cold, heavy with mist, as Azov snipers positioned themselves with a clear view of the bunker entrances. Their first task was to neutralize the Russian sentries, those tasked with standing guard against surprise assault. Within moments, muffled cracks echoed across the fields as Russian watchmen fell, their posts abandoned. With the sentries gone, the bunkers were no longer defended from outside threats. They became isolated pockets of trapped soldiers with no eyes on the horizon. Then came the artillery. Short, sharp, and devastating, the strikes rained down with brutal efficiency. Explosions tore through the earth, collapsing entrances, shaking the underground chambers, and forcing Russian troops deeper into their shelters. What had been built to resist artillery became vulnerable to carefully placed firepower. Smoke and dust filled the air, shrouding the battlefield in chaos. For the Russians inside, every explosion brought fear that the very ground above them would collapse and bury them alive. As the dust settled, Azov ground units moved forward with precision. Using small unit tactics honed over years of fighting, they advanced from multiple directions, surrounding the bunkers with coordinated movements. Grenades thundered through entrances, controlled demolitions ripped through walls, and bursts of automatic fire echoed in the confined spaces. Panic quickly replaced the confidence of the Russian defenders. They had believed the bunkers were impenetrable, symbols of their security, but Azov had transformed those very shelters into cages with no exit. One Ukrainian soldier later described the moment in stark terms. The Russians thought they had a fortress, but when we closed in, their fortress became their grave. The battle was not only physical, it was psychological. Inside the bunkers, Russian troops found themselves cut off from commanders, their communications disrupted by the intensity of the attack. Fear became as deadly as shrapnel. They could hear the relentless gunfire outside, the rhythmic hammer of explosions, and the grinding collapse of earth above them. The tunnels and chambers, meant to protect, now amplified every sound of battle, making it clear that Azov controlled the battlefield both above and below. Claustrophobia and panic spread among the defenders. Some attempted desperate escapes under cover of darkness, crawling through narrow shafts in hopes of reaching open ground. Yet the sharp eyes of Azov snipers were waiting. One by one, escapees were cut down before they could even raise their rifles. Others refused to move, clinging to their underground chambers until Azov's engineers set charges and collapsed the tunnels, burying men alive in their own fortifications. For Ukraine, this was more than a tactical victory. It was a statement, a demonstration that no matter how deeply Russia dug into Ukrainian soil, there would be no safe place for invaders. The message was unmistakable. There is no fortress strong enough, no bunker deep enough to shield those who wage war on our homeland. By the time the battle ended, the bunkers were silent. Smoke drifted lazily from shattered entrances. Shards of concrete and twisted steel lay scattered across the ground. The once mighty fortifications had been reduced to rubble, littered with the wreckage of war. Azov troops emerged victorious, having destroyed one of the strongest Russian defensive positions in the sector. The significance of the victory extended beyond the battlefield. Morale among Ukrainian forces surged, while Russian troops faced a grim realization. Their supposed strongholds could be breached and destroyed. Analysts noted that this battle symbolized the decline of Russian reliance on fixed defenses. No matter how deep they dug or how strong their bunkers seemed, Ukrainian forces had proven they could penetrate them with a combination of intelligence, precision, and relentless will. Yet this was no isolated event. Across Ukraine, the use of bunkers and trench networks had become a defining feature of the war. The conflict often resembled the grinding stalemates of earlier centuries, with soldiers entrenched in mud and earth. But what Azov achieved here demonstrated how modern warfare is evolving. It is not just about overwhelming firepower, it is about the synergy of technology, discipline, and adaptability. Drones, sniper fire, and small mobile units can dismantle even the most heavily fortified enemies. Military experts would later describe this engagement as a case study in hybrid warfare, blending conventional tactics with modern intelligence tools and psychological pressure to break the will of entrenched forces. For Russia, the implications were sobering. If bunkers could no longer guarantee safety, soldiers would begin to question their orders to occupy them. Fear erodes discipline, and hesitation erodes effectiveness. Slowly, one fortified position at a time, the myth of Russian invulnerability crumbled. But behind every account of victory lies a human cost. Ukrainian fighters risked their lives in every stage of the operation. The silence of dawn pierced by gunfire, the choking smoke of collapsed tunnels, and the constant tension of close-quarters combat pushed men to their limits. For the Russians inside, the horror was even more intense. Many were young conscripts, drafted with minimal training, promised safety in the bunkers that became their tombs. In the darkness of collapsing tunnels, some begged for mercy, others resisted until the bitter end. In war, mercy is rare, and in this battle, survival was almost impossible. Historians may one day look back on this clash not simply for the lives lost, but for what it represented. It shattered the illusion that Russian forces could hide underground and remain untouchable. It proved that determination, intelligence, and skill could dismantle fortifications built on fear and steel. For Ukraine, it was a turning point, a reminder of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. For Russia, it was a lesson written in blood. No trench, no fortress, and no bunker can protect an invader from the will of a people defending their homeland. The Azov Regiment, often controversial and widely debated, once again cemented its reputation as one of Ukraine's fiercest and most effective fighting units. Their actions in the bunkers stand as a testament to the discipline, the courage, and the sheer determination of soldiers who refuse to surrender their country to invaders. In conclusion, the story of how Azov troops obliterated Russian soldiers hiding in bunkers is more than just a tale of victory. It is a reminder of the harsh realities of modern warfare, where courage and intelligence outweigh numbers, where technology amplifies skill, and where the determination to survive shapes the future of nations. For Ukraine, it is another step in a long and brutal struggle for freedom. For Russia, it is another brutal reminder that aggression carries consequences, and that no fortress, no trench, no underground chamber will ever be enough to shield an invader from the relentless will of a people defending their land. This has been Delta History. Thank you for joining us as we uncover the untold stories of war, battles, and the people who shape history on the front lines. Stay with us as the struggle continues and as history is written one battle at a time.